right. Good afternoon to many of you. Good morning to anybody where time zones are still joining us on the Western Coast here. We're here on our next session. It's a panel discussion today on AI security and really AI, generative AI as a broader industry. And we've got a bit of a star-studded lineup for you today. Myself excluded, of course. I'm a CISO and executive advisor here at EVOTEK. I'm a PhD educated out of Southern California, about 20 years in the industry. And, despite that, I think that makes me one of the young guns here at EVOTEK. So great place to work and quite a bit of knowledge here. And I'll say, as we introduce some of our panelists today, it's quite the lineup. We've got Neerav Kingsland here from Anthropic, I think a very well-known name in the AI space. We've got Dr. Rony Ohayon here. He's the CEO and founder of DeepKeep. We've got Dr. Naveen Verma here. It's from EnCharge AI, and he's got quite a tenure here at Princeton. So with that, I'd love to hear a little bit of an intro from each of you. So just a quick elevator pitch, is there something that makes me get off on the floor with you and miss my own elevator stop? Or is there something that makes me take a half step backwards? Let me know. But Neerav, why don't we start with you, sir?
Sure. So really quickly, my name's Neerav. I lead up global accounts at Anthropic. Anthropic formed 2.5 years ago when the head of the large language model team and the safety team spun out of OpenAI. We spent the first 2 years building our own model, Claude, which we've now launched and scaled. And the big differentiator is a deep focus on safety. We've had a lot of research come out lately showing that our models are harder to jailbreak. And as these models get more and more capable, both for humanity and for enterprise use case, we want to stay at the frontier of safety.
Great. And Dr. Ohayon, how about yourself? You've got this new hobby called DeepKeep. What's going on there?
Yes. So hello, everybody. Yes, I am the CEO and the founder of DeepKeep. DeepKeep provides end-to-end solution for AI security and trustworthiness. I believe it will be part of our discussion today. Lots of buzz around security of AI, and we are targeting enterprises to give them solution that are agnostic to the types of models that you are using and covering actually all the issues of security and trustworthiness.
Fantastic. And Dr. Verma, you've got some good tenure at a small place called Princeton and some recent ventures with EnCharge AI. Let us know what's going on there.
Sure, it's great to be a part of this. Thanks a lot for Jacob. Hello to everyone. I'm Naveen Verma. I've been a professor at Princeton since 2009. My research is focused on next generation approaches to computing. We build full stack systems, build very complex chips in my lab, but also software and compilers all the way up to the programming interfaces, which gives us a good opportunity to interact with a bunch of people across the industry and understand problems and challenges. In the research world, we do a bunch of things, many of which don't work, but we've developed some stuff that actually does work, and it's been exciting to try to commercialize that at EnCharge, where we're building really fundamentally differentiated and very advanced, very energy efficient systems for AI compute with a lot of consideration towards the challenges that'll make this stuff adoptable or not, having a lot, of course, to do with security and safety.
I appreciate that. It's great for each of us, if you imagine this bubble around AI and security and trustworthiness and ethics, each of us are kind of pushing little pinpoints out on the outside of this bubble. And it takes a lot of broken pins for that one pin to really move something outbound. So, to your point, Naveen, while it takes a lot of things that don't end up working out, there's a lot of trial and error in here and, failing fast. There are some great innovations that are going on. And, for our participants that took time earlier today to listen in on our keynote from Moody, very, very articulate, very intelligent in this space. And, Shutterfly is doing some amazing things in the generative AI space. And even into the VC panels today, it's been great to see where some of the best investors in our industry really see value in things coming into play. As a practicing CISO myself, my job is to really enable businesses and, how do we get out there? But I'm constantly thinking about what's the risk, what's going on here that we need to keep an eye out for. So in that vein, Rony, I'm really interested, Rony, to hear from you. What are the darker sides of artificial intelligence, and is AI more of a help or a hindrance to businesses and cybersecurity in general today? What do we need to be looking out for?
Yeah, good question. So actually, AI is heaven to attackers, and it is more than just fakes and deep fakes. In general, I would say there are two main categories of risks and threats that are associated with AI boom today. So one I would say is that one category here is that attackers can use AI for classical cyber attacks, but to make much more accurate attack, much more complex attack, to use Gen AI, to use fake information, to make classical attacks more complex, faster, and much more challenging. This is, I would say, the first category. But the most important one, I would say, is attacks on AI itself. And here it is totally different from classical cyber attacks because unlike traditional cyber attacks that are usually caused by software bugs, misconfiguration, human error, AI attacks are inherently vulnerable to new types of attacks because it is a machine that is taking decision. And therefore, all the existing cybersecurity solutions are excellent, but they are not relevant to protect against this new adversarial AI domain, which include thousands of attacks. But there are several categories here: evasion attack, poisoning, backdoor attacks, stealing attack, extraction, etc. So new domains of attacks that today there is no good solution, to prevent these attacks, and it is relevant across the entire AI life cycle, pre-deployment, post-deployment. So, and of course, it needs totally different approach in order to protect against these new domains of attacks.
It's really interesting to see. There's always this inherent, and we'll talk a little bit today about trustworthiness and, repudiation and models and things of that nature. But there seems to be this inherent trust that comes with an AI model that you just assume, hey, this computer is dealing with this wealth of knowledge, and this model clearly knows more about the nuances of something than I do, and especially in the use cases where folks are using it. I heard the new term today, sidekick, using that instead of co-pilot going forward, but they're almost using it in this dynamic duo standpoint to better enable them as a worker. And when you've got those types of poisoning attacks and other bias attacks going on, there can be, with that level of inherent trust, there can be some real damage done there. Neerav, as we focus on some of the partnerships that are going on, I even find, in the recent DBIR reports and some Ponemon Institute reports, partner compromise has now surpassed business email compromise as a #1 injection point in a company. And as more of my partners are leveraging AI, how are some of these attacks and threats going to really affect my partner network, and kind of how you're handling that with Anthropic as well?
Yeah, a couple different thoughts on the sidekick. One thing we like to say is you should think of Claude or any generative AI model that's good as like brilliant 19-year-old. So they can wow you, they can dazzle you, but they can also go off the rails pretty quickly, and you shouldn't get too overconfident in your brilliant 19-year-old intern. Now the good news is, as Claude 3, Claude 4, GPT-5 comes out, you're going to be moving up from a brilliant intern to a brilliant 25-year-old, to a brilliant PhD and so forth. And so I think these models are only going to get more and more capable. And in terms of overall security, I think it's complicated on how enterprises are partnering right now. And so I can just talk from our perspective. Like, when we start partnering with enterprises and we start talking to their CISOs and their legal teams, like, they know Anthropic's a 2.5-year-old company, and OpenAI, our main competitors, maybe a 5 or 6-year-old company, but none of us have the deep track records of a major cloud provider that companies have at this point opened up their data and security systems to. So I think in this first wave, what you're seeing is a lot of the large LLM providers are partnering with cloud providers. And so we just went on Amazon Bedrock. So now if you're an AWS customer, from your own VPC, you can hit a copy of our model via private link, and Anthropic doesn't have any access to your data. OpenAI has done the same thing with Azure. Will likely be on GCP as well in 2024. So I think in some sense, for at least the next year or two, the cloud providers are going to be the major partner intermediaries between LLMs and large enterprises.
That's great. Naveen, as we talk about some of the risks that are out here and some of the partnerships, I'm curious with the work that you're doing with EnCharge and how you're taking some of this from theoretical to real world. What does building a real business case for AI adoption look? What does that take? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of elements to it, right? There's a lot of hype and excitement, and this is really where that 19-year-old wows you around all of these different use cases that can happen, and people are compelled. And then you go back and you think about, well, how are we actually going to deploy this? How is this going to get adopted into our workflows? What does the change management look like? What are the security compliance issues? All of those sorts of things. And that's where, the sobering reality hits. And I think the answer to this is we need to overcome that valley of death, because these are truly, sort of high value applications and opportunities. And I think we're at a phase now where people are moving beyond conceptualizing use cases and trying pilots and actually seeing, in some cases, at least on the leading front here, that there's real value in these. But these are all matters that need to be resolved. Much like Rony talked about, sort of from the security side, that AI opens up this large surface of concerns or potential attacks. Sort of just the adoption and potential risks in adoption for enterprises, it opens up the same sorts of concerns in those ways. Given how capable AI is, I think we need to think about how we address these in a way that's appropriately, scalable and agile to the ways that AI can be beneficial. I think that's going to be the big difference for all of us in the ecosystem. This is not going to be to use the analogy from the, sort of attack security community, right? This is not going to be like an attacker and a defense and an attacker and a defense and a one-off kind of approach. This needs to have pretty robust structural ways that we can sort of institute that agility and that thinking. And that requires hardware, and software, and that's where EnCharge has a role to play together with people who are putting foundational models out there and people who are building the security layers up there. So there needs to be a lot of coordination if this is going to be anywhere close to what its potential suggests it can be. The other element we're going to need, I think, to bring together that ecosystem is going to be open public discussions and conversations, and whether it's regulations that drive that, or it's some form of community self-assembly that drives that, I don't know. But people are going to need to see with transparency what's happening and how it's happening. And so I think that it's really important for all of us to come together to provide that agility and that transparency.
Some of that transparency piece, this is a big factor, I think, for companies today. And I really think with all the media sensationalization that's going on here, there's some real concern among the boardrooms around ethics and deferring so many positions in these spaces. So, Rony, I'm curious in your viewpoints, what is AI trustworthiness? Why is this critical? And how are businesses leveraging this to manage some of the risk associated with AI-driven decision-making?
So AI trustworthiness include reliable, explainable, trusted, and monitored use of AI, and it covers lots of issues that you have mentioned. Some of them that are related to fairness and biases, but also confidence level in the decision of AI. Explainability is extremely important. Think on a bank that is using, for example, AI model whether to take a decision whether to give a loan to customer or not. And for example, the decision of the AI model was, well, to refuse this customer, and the customer will ask, but why? Well, say, well, the box decided. I cannot explain. What should I do? I don't know. You should ask the box. So you must have much more transparent AI, explainable AI to understand the decision of AI. In addition to that, by the way, it is also trustworthiness is also tightly coupled with security, because, for example, if you have AI model with weak spot or drift or out of distribution, etc., attackers can use this weak spot in order, to attack the model, to attack organization, etc. So even I just read the paper from Gartner published 2 or 3 weeks ago, with the top strategic technological trend for 2024. And the first one is what they call TRISM, Trust, Risk, and Security Management, because they are tightly coupled. And you must, it is not a solution for security, another one for trustworthiness, another one for compliance. You need to have one good solution that will cover everything. It is more a strategic decision of organization that involve the CISO, but also the data scientist team. Because usually today, CISOs are expert in security, but not expert in AI. And also AI, data scientists might be perfect in data and to build models, etc., but not really in security. So you must have partnership inside any organization to define the right strategy and the way to handle it. So because every aspect here is critical to the organization.
So Naveen, in that mindset of trustworthiness and really getting this to be something that organizations can trust and really becomes a critical cornerstone in their business, how do we get away from, corporate thought leaders? How are we getting away from the fun fantasy that media sensationalization has brought around AI and really get this down to business value add and really start to speak the language of our boards and our C-suites, to make this not seem like some kind of crazy fairyland product and something that can really provide an impact?
It's a process, right? Even in those boardrooms and C-suites, the immediate reaction is, wow, we need to have a strategy because look at all of these things that AI can do. And, the realities among the people who are actually driving advanced AI and algorithms and things like that is, well, we do have a strategy and we have been doing this kind of thing. And so we need to, sort of think of this as an evolution. It's really more of an inflection point. It's a very rapid evolution. And there needs to be sort of agility to be able to adapt to that. But I think that, it's a process. And there are, sort of quickly going to be movements from, what are this, sort of rich and dazzling set of potential use cases to questions around, well, how does this actually work and what are the compliance concerns? Fortunately, in the conversations that I've been in, that does quickly rise to the top of people's minds. How is this going to fit into our compliance protocols and our, sort of data management, sort of workflows and protocols? So I'm encouraged by that. I think the interesting question is going to be, where are the solutions to that going to come from, and how are people going to accept and embrace those? I'll give you an example, right? If we truly think that AI is starting to add value on the level of humans, sidekicks, co-pilots, whichever, sort of way you want to think about it. Look, we don't have explainability necessarily from humans in terms of the internal, sort of analytics of how they came to an answer. But we work with humans to ask them why they thought that, and we test things, through authentication approaches. And look, AI has shown itself to be very, very capable. Can we start to think about it complying with those levels of trustworthiness and so on? Now, this is not my area, but I think the thing I point to is, how are those solutions to sort of trustworthiness going to come about, and how is their acceptance going to, sort of proceed?
It's I'm watching Neerav over here, and he's agreeing with some, and I see him kind of quandary on a couple of other things. And if we've done something great here at MTEK in 23, it's getting great, unique perspectives, and we've got talent here from all over the world. And Neerav, I'll start with you, but I'd love the group to opine here as well. As how do some of these international perspectives on AI and cybersecurity differ, and what can we learn from some of the approaches that are being taken by other countries?
Sure. Let me start by just doubling down a little bit on the pragmatic eval side. And I think I have a little less glimpse into international security. What we're seeing on the ground with customers, and I think this will eventually hit policymakers, is just the importance of evaluations. To Naveen's point, you can give tests even if you don't quite know why the model's doing what they're doing. And so generally when we're starting with a customer, we ask them, give us 100 questions that if the model got right, you'd start to feel confident that you could deploy this to your customers. And then we start with prompting support. How you prompt these models is pretty idiosyncratic and it changes across models. And then you might pull in a tool like RAG, where you're retrieving information and grounding the model from the enterprise. Then you might fine tune the model if you want to increase performance. And so I think, what really where the rubber hits the road is the quality and confidence you have in your evals. Because if those are giving you a good indicator of how the model will perform in the wild, then we can do a lot behind the scenes to prepare for that. So I think enterprise grade evals, and then on the policy level, like, before a company can deploy a model, it has to pass certain safety evals, are going to be really important. And I think both globally and domestically, we're a little immature there. I don't think there's a robust set of third-party evals that we can all trust, either on the commercial side or societal side. So I view that as a big area of growth that needs to happen in the next couple of years.
Ronnie, any input on those growth opportunities and perhaps where other countries can help mesh together with what we're innovating here in Southern California to add to that?
So first, in general, I think that the AI Act in Europe, I don't like regulations, but I would say that it seems that the AI Act in Europe have quite good guidelines in terms of how to make AI much more secure, private, and ethics, and so they are trying to cover both the security, privacy, but also fairness and biases and explainability and transparency in a way that they just give the guidelines, not talking about how to do that, but what should be done eventually, and to make sure that you are doing it. And part of it, of course, is for any before deployment of AI, you need to make sure that your AI meets, I would say, this guideline. So it is much more than than scanning the code. It is to check it on very different scenarios, and so it is like kind of penetration testing way, but that is unique to the AI domain and to the specific tasks that your model or needs to solve or to give answer to. And then after having all of that before deployment, then you can start deploying it, but of course to keep monitoring, because it is not one time. You need to monitor your AI because there are always new risks and threats. And also, today you have drifts of the model. So you need always to make sure that your AI model meets, I would say, these guidelines.
We're coming close on time, but I really wanted to take a second to address some of the economics of this. There's a lot of consternation in the industry around, is this going to displace jobs, create jobs? Is it going to create more than it displaces? So Naveen, I'm curious for your quick thoughts on this, around the economics of this, in both in terms of savings as well as investment required for reasonable AI security measures. Where do you see the economies of this impacting the global markets?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? I think, listen, there's two ways to think about this. One is, sort of what sorts of economies and labor economies is this going to displace? The other is, in what ways is it going to improve the efficiencies of those? But I think the general principle that I've certainly observed in my life is the way we've always defined value add and intelligence by humans is the ability of those humans to use the tools that they have at their disposal to do the best sort of work possible. And in my view, AI, one way to think about it is it's another tool, and the capabilities of this tool will define what human intelligence and sort of human value add means. And so that's a process for us, right? It means that we need to understand how AI works and where its limitations are. That's going to distinguish humans from AI and what it can do. I think the other thing, though, is we as the developers of AI systems need to really figure out how do these tools fit in a way that really adds value. Right now we have a lot of cute concepts, right? But what are going to be the real value add concepts, and what are going to be the ones that give us the biggest multipliers on efficiency? In some cases, those will be summarization kinds of use cases that present first drafts, or 3 or 4 first drafts to an expert human And it's really that first draft that's going to, together with the human, give us the multiplier and advantage. So I think those are things for us to figure out. We're kind of in a what's cute and what's kind of dazzling phase right now. But I think both driven by what the capabilities are of the AI and driven by a better understanding of how to use it and how to integrate it into our workflows, the real value use cases and workflows will emerge.
I really appreciate that. We've got maybe a little bit less than 1 minute. Neerav, I'm interested in with your experience. A little bit of Yale Law School, a little bit of Anthropic. You've got some great insight here. Where's all this headed? If I'm thinking about something headed into the weekend, where is generative AI going? Where's AI overall going? Opportunities, risks. Where do you see this in 10 years? I mean, that's forever in AI time, 5-10 years.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons we're so focused on safety is how fast we see this all moving.
Yeah.
So like a quick just 101 basics on large language models is they really only have 3 inputs. There's the hardware you use, so that's the chips. A lot of us use NVIDIA right now, but there's increased competition there, thankfully. Right. There's the software, so the code we write, and then there's the data we train the model on. And 2 out of those three things are increasing rapidly. So hardware quality is improving every chip cycle, and software and code quality is improving very, very quickly. We're seeing 2 to 5x improvements in each of those across every model cycle. So if you just take, we just released Claude 2 a couple months ago. We think Claude 4 will likely be at least 100x more powerful than Claude 2, and that's only going to be a couple years. So, like I said, we're at the 19-year-old intern stage now, but when you look at the next 5 to 10 years, like we're going to be at the doctor, law partner, senior professional stage in not too long, and maybe beyond that. So I think the number one thing to think home is like, as you're building product roadmaps, thinking where your business is heading, is you want to build with alignment into how fast these models are getting better, not just where they're at now. And if you want to drive that home, like go play around with GPT-2. I'm sure you can still find it somewhere on the internet, but it's basically unusable for any enterprise use case. And that was just a couple years ago. So yeah, my one takeaway message would be the stuff's moving very, very fast in terms of capabilities.
I think by metaphor, we're really in a renaissance period here. As I think back to tech evolution, human evolution, we haven't seen anything that's got 10x, 100x iterations since Renaissance times, right? It's really impressive to see where we're going with it. With that, I want to thank each of you. It's been great, talking with you and getting some of your insight and expertise from each of your unique angles. For our MTEK audience, we've got another session coming right up, so stay right in your chairs, and we'll be back with our next session here in just a minute. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.